What happens when someone in the audience carries a bigger secret than the person on stage? Stop the tape. Stop it right now. Dr. Phil's voice cut through the studio like a knife. The cameras froze. The production crew looked at each other in confusion. A woman in the third row was standing, trembling, tears streaming down her face. I know her, she said, her voice breaking. That girl on stage. I know who she really is. What happened next would become the most unforgettable moment in Dr. Phil's 25-year career. 45 minutes earlier, the show had started like any other. The audience filed in, taking their seats under the bright studio lights. Cameras rolled. Dr. Phil walked onto the stage to his usual applause, ready to begin another episode focused on helping someone in crisis. The guest scheduled for that day was Emma, a 19-year-old girl who had written to the show desperate for help. She sat in the iconic chair across from Dr. Phil, visibly nervous, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Emma, Dr. Phil began with his trademark directness. You wrote to us saying you've been struggling with your identity. That you feel like you don't belong anywhere. Tell me what's going on. Emma took a shaky breath. I was adopted when I was 3 years old. I have loving parents, but I've always felt like something was missing. Like there's a piece of me I can't find. The audience listened intently, unaware that one woman in the third row had just stopped breathing. Dr. Phil leaned forward. And you've been searching for your birth mother? For 5 years, Emma said, her voice cracking. I've hired private investigators, done DNA tests, searched through records. Nothing. It's like she disappeared. And I need to know why she gave me up. I need to know if she ever thinks about me. The camera captured Emma's pain in close-up. Audience members dabbed at their eyes with tissues. But in row 3, seat 7, a woman named Margaret sat frozen, her face drained of all color. Her hands gripped the armrests so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Dr. Phil continued the interview, employing his signature blend of tough love and genuine compassion. Emma, I want you to understand something. The not knowing is eating you alive. And that's valid. But we need to prepare you for the possibility that the answers you find might not be the ones you want. I know, Emma whispered. But I'd rather know the truth than live with this emptiness. Stop the tape. The words came from the audience. Everyone turned. Margaret was standing, one hand raised, the other pressed against her chest as if trying to hold her heart inside her body. Dr. Phil's head snapped toward her. Ma'am? Stop it, Margaret said louder, her voice shaking. Please! Stop the show. The studio went completely silent. This had never happened before. Not in 25 years. The production assistant looked at the director. The director looked at Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil raised his hand to the cameras. Hold on. Everyone hold on. He walked toward Margaret, microphone in hand. The audience parted slightly, creating a path. Emma turned in her chair, confused, watching this stranger who had just interrupted her session. Ma'am, Dr. Phil said gently, now standing in front of Margaret. What's going on? Margaret's lips trembled. She couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The weight of 16 years of guilt, grief, and secrets, was crushing her chest. Dr. Phil made a decision in that split second that would change everything. Bring her up here, he said to his staff. And somebody get her some water. 2 production assistants helped Margaret out of her row and guided her onto the stage. Emma watched, bewildered, as this crying stranger was brought to stand just feet away from her. Dr. Phil positioned himself between them. His voice was softer now, almost a whisper, but his authority filled the room. What's your name? Margaret, she managed. Margaret Holloway. Margaret, why did you ask me to stop the show? She looked at Emma. Really looked at her. Those eyes. That nose. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. Because, Margaret's voice broke completely. That's my daughter. The studio erupted in gasps. Emma's face went white. What? Emma stood up from her chair. What are you talking about? You're not, My mother's name isn't Margaret Holloway, it's Sarah Mitchell, Margaret finished. That was my name before I changed it. After I gave you up. Dr. Phil held up both hands. Okay, everybody. I need both of you to sit down. Right now. They sat, Emma in her original chair, Margaret in the second guest chair that a production assistant had quickly brought out. The two women stared at each other across the 3 feet of space that felt like an ocean. Dr. Phil pulled his own chair closer, creating a triangle. His expression was unlike anything the audience had seen before. No performance. No television persona. Just raw, genuine human compassion. Margaret, he said quietly, how did you end up in this audience today? She wiped her eyes. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. My friend won tickets to the show, she watches every day. She asked me to come with her. I almost said no. But something made me say yes. And when did you realize? The second she walked on stage. Margaret looked at Emma. You have your father's eyes. But everything else, you're me at 19. The way you move your hands. The way you bite your lip when you're scared. I knew immediately. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Emma was shaking now. Why? Why did you give me up? And why did you disappear? I've been looking for you for 5 years. Dr. Phil raised a hand. Emma, I need you to breathe. Just breathe for a second. He turned to Margaret. You owe her an explanation. Right now. Why did you leave? Margaret closed her eyes. When she opened them, 16 years of pain poured out. I was 17 when I got pregnant. Your father. She looked at Emma. Your father was 19. We were kids. We had nothing. No money, no support, no family who would help us. When you were born, I tried. God, I tried so hard. But I was homeless within 6 months. I was sleeping in my car with a baby. I couldn't feed you properly. You got sick, and I couldn't afford the medicine. Her voice cracked. One night, I was holding you, and you were crying because you were hungry, and I had nothing to give you. Nothing. And I realized that if I loved you, I had to let someone else love you better. The audience was in tears. Even the camera operators were wiping their eyes. So I found a good family. A couple who had been trying to have a baby for years. They were kind. They had a home. They had everything I couldn't give you. And I made the hardest decision of my life. Emma's face was wet with tears. But why did you disappear? Why did you make it impossible for me to find you? Because I was ashamed. Margaret sobbed. Because I thought if you ever found me, you'd hate me for giving you up. So I changed my name, moved states, buried everything about who I was. I thought I was protecting you from the pain of knowing who I really was. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. He let the moment breathe. Let the weight of those words settle over everyone in the room. This wasn't television anymore. This was sacred ground. Margaret, Dr. Phil said finally, his voice gentle but firm. You made the most selfless decision a mother can make. You gave your daughter a chance at a life you couldn't provide. But you also made a mistake. Margaret looked up at him. You thought disappearing was protecting her. But all you did was leave her with questions she couldn't answer. With a wound that couldn't heal. Do you understand that? Yes, Margaret whispered. Dr. Phil turned to Emma. And you? You've spent 5 years looking for someone to blame for the emptiness you feel. You thought finding your birth mother would fill that hole. But Emma, that hole was never about her. It was about you needing to forgive yourself for feeling like you didn't belong. Emma blinked. Forgive myself? You've been carrying guilt that isn't yours to carry. You've been wondering if you were the reason she left. If you weren't good enough. Weren't wanted enough. And that's the lie that's been eating you alive. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He stood up and walked to the edge of the stage. Cut the cameras for a minute. The director's voice came through the speakers. "Dr. Phil, we're in the middle of—" I said, "Cut them." His tone left no room for argument. The red recording lights blinked off. The audience sat in stunned silence. Dr. Phil turned back to Margaret and Emma. "What happens next isn't for television. It's for you too. I'm going to step back, and you're going to talk to each other. Not as guest and audience member. As mother and daughter." He moved to the side of the stage, giving them space. For a moment neither woman moved. Then Emma stood up. Slowly, hesitantly, she took 3 steps forward. Margaret rose to meet her. "I don't hate you," Emma said, her voice barely audible. "I've been angry. I've been hurt. But I don't hate you. I'm so sorry." Margaret choked out. "I'm so sorry for everything you went through because of me." But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. She held it up between them. "I found this 2 years ago in my adoption file. It's the only picture I have of you holding me. I was 3 days old." Margaret took the photo with shaking hands. It showed a teenage girl with hollow eyes cradling a tiny newborn, her face a mixture of love and devastation. "I kept it," Emma said. "Even when I was angry. Even when I wanted to hate you. I kept it because I could see it in your face. You loved me. Even then you loved me." Margaret couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming freely. Emma took a breath. "I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying everything is okay. But I'd like to know you. The real you. Not the ghost I've been chasing. The actual person standing in front of me." Margaret reached out slowly, giving Emma every chance to pull away. But Emma didn't move. Margaret's hand touched her daughter's face for the first time in 16 years. "You're so beautiful," Margaret whispered. "You're everything I hoped you'd become." The dam broke. Both women collapsed into each other's arms, sobbing. The audience openly wept. Even Dr. Phil, standing at the edge of the stage, had to turn away for a moment to compose himself. The studio erupted into applause. But this wasn't performance applause. This was the sound of 200 people witnessing something holy. Dr. Phil let them hold each other for a full minute before he gently approached. He placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "Ladies," he said softly, "let's sit down. We have some work to do." They separated slowly, reluctantly, and returned to their chairs, but this time, Margaret moved her chair right next to Emma's. Their hands remained clasped between them. Dr. Phil sat across from them, and the cameras quietly turned back on. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice taking on that familiar authoritative tone that millions of viewers knew. "You two need professional help to navigate this. It's not enough to have found each other. You need therapy. Both of you. Together and separately." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. "I'm personally referring you to Dr. Sandra Williams. She specializes in adoption reunification. She's expecting your call." Margaret took the card with trembling fingers. "This won't be easy," Dr. Phil continued. "There will be hard conversations. There will be moments when old pain resurfaces. But if you commit to the work, if you show up honestly and do the difficult thing, you have a chance at something real." Emma looked at Margaret. "I want to try." "Do you?" "Yes," Margaret said immediately. "Whatever it takes." Dr. Phil nodded. "Good. Because that little girl in that photograph deserved a mother. And that 17-year-old girl in that photograph deserved support she never got. You can't change the past. But you can damn sure change what happens from here. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten." The show wrapped shortly after, but the real story continued off camera. Dr. Phil's team arranged for immediate counseling sessions. They connected Margaret with resources to address the trauma she'd been carrying for nearly 2 decades. They made sure Emma had the support she needed to process this seismic shift in her life. 3 months later, Dr. Phil received an email. It was from Emma. Dr. Phil. It read, I wanted you to know that Margaret and I have been meeting with Dr. Williams twice a week. It's hard. Really hard. But it's also healing. We've started having coffee together on Sundays. She told me about my father. About her life. About the night she made the decision to place me for adoption. And I told her about growing up, about my family, about the hole I'd been trying to fill. We're not fixed. But we're real with each other. And that's something I never thought I'd have. Thank you for stopping the show that day. Thank you for seeing what needed to happen. You gave us both a chance to finally come home. Dr. Phil kept that email in his desk drawer. On difficult days, when the weight of other people's pain felt too heavy, he'd take it out and read it again. Because this was why he did what he did. Not for the ratings. Not for the fame. But for the moments when stopping everything, breaking protocol, cutting the cameras, making space for raw human connection, was the only thing that mattered. The photograph Emma had shown Margaret that day now sits in a frame in Margaret's living room. Next to it is a new photograph, mother and daughter, standing together, smiling. Not erasing the past, but acknowledging it while building something new. And somewhere in the Dr. Phil archive, there's a recording of the moment that changed both their lives. A moment that started when a woman in row 3, seat 7, couldn't stay silent anymore. Because sometimes, the person who needs help most isn't the one on stage. Sometimes, they're sitting in the audience, carrying a secret that's been destroying them for years. And sometimes, all it takes is one person brave enough to stand up and say, Stop. I need to tell you something. That day, Margaret was that person. And Dr. Phil was wise enough to listen. The legacy of that moment extends beyond Emma and Margaret. It changed how Dr. Phil's production team thought about every show. They added protocols for audience members who might be triggered by a guest story. They brought in additional counselors on standby. They recognized that trauma doesn't just belong to the person in the spotlight, it can be sitting anywhere in that room. Most importantly, the show's viewers learned something profound that day. Healing doesn't follow a script. It doesn't happen on schedule. And sometimes, the most powerful moments of transformation happen when someone has the courage to interrupt the plan and say, This matters more than anything else right now. Dr. Phil built a career on telling hard truths. But that day, he did something even more important. He created space for a truth that needed to be told. He stopped being the host and became the facilitator of something bigger than television. And in that space, a mother and daughter who had been lost to each other for 16 years finally found their way home.